Okay, my name's Jeff, K6ERA. I live in Redwood City. I've been the president of the USS Hornet Amateur Radio Club for, I think, at least the last 4 years. I think we're going on 5. Um, we are located in Alameda, California, at the old Alameda Naval Base, tied up at the Doolittle Pier, which is the pier which the Doolittle Raiders left from to raid Japan. We are not the Hornet that the Doolittle Raiders were on, but that the previous Hornet left with the Doolittle Raiders on it from the pier that we're located on. The club was founded in 2002, so 22 years ago. We used the call sign November Bravo 6 Golf Charlie. The reason why we use that call sign is the Hornets call sign when the ship was active was November Bravo Golf Charlie when it was in the Navy. And so we put a 6 in the middle of it and we got our ham call. So we still have a tie to the ship's history. And in fact, earlier this year, I managed to contact the Navy about getting our old call sign back, November Bravo Golf Charlie, so we can use that for things like the Armed Forces Day crossband test and possibly other special events. Of course, we have to get authorization from the Navy and in some cases, I think the FCC. In any case, I had to get authorization from both for the crossband test, but we can now also use the call sign for some special events, November Bravo Golf Charlie. So we have that call sign reassigned to the ship. Lots of other museum ships do the same thing. I think the Iowa does, I know for sure, and a few others. So we all take our Navy call signs and put the 6 or whatever state we're in the middle of it, and that's how we get our ham call. Our mission as a club, the Hornet Amateur Radio Club on the ship, is to support and preserve the history of the USS Hornet. We also promote amateur radio and its importance in today's digital environment. We maintain an operational station on board ship in a safe and stable location. We have generator power in case the power goes out. The whole ship can be powered up by generators in the event of a disaster or an emergency. And the number one thing is we provide a real fun environment to learn and experience radio in a historic location. As you'll see, the Hornet's got quite a bit of history from World War II through to the space race. Up here, some old R390s which don't operate right here. And that's currently the radios we're using, and that is soon to change. And I'll show you that in a later slide. So as a member of the USS Hornet Amateur Radio Club, you don't have to be an official Hornet volunteer. There's a difference. You can just be a club member, or you can be a club member and you can be a Hornet volunteer. If you choose to be a volunteer, you have to go through what we call new volunteer orientation. And it's just a basic, very quick HR class. They want you to know how to act around guests, what you can and can't do. They'd like for you to know at least where to point people to the heads or bathrooms. Because as you're walking around, if they know you have something to do with the Hornet, sooner or later, some guest is going to ask you where the bathroom is. And you're going to need to point them in the right direction. And it's a big ship, so sometimes it's a bit of a walk. But like I said, new volunteer orientation acquaints you with the safety rules, ship's procedures, and policies of the museum. And that is always on the first Monday of every, or first Saturday of every month at, I believe, 9 o'clock. And now they have it on the third Monday of every month. And like I said, it's about 30 minutes. You can get that information from the USS Hornet Sea, Air, and Space Museum website and just click on volunteer and you'll see the stuff about NVO. A lot of our members are volunteers in other groups. So we have had in the past Hornet Amateur Radio Club members that are docents. Some have been in aircraft restoration, ships restoration, education, liveaboard, and we encourage our members to get involved with other things on the ship. So if you're really into historic airplanes and want to learn how to work on them, you could join aircraft restoration. If you want to chip paint, you could join ships restoration. So lots of different things to do. We have quite a few liveaboards with Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts. Almost every weekend when I'm leaving the ship, I see them coming aboard for an overnight. So we have a pretty robust education department as well. And the best thing about all of it is it's really fun and rewarding. And it's a lot of fun to be on the ship and help other people learn a lot about the history. This picture here is that we have here, just speaking of aircraft restoration, is our FM2 Wildcat. That came out of Lake Michigan in 1995. The Great Lakes. What the US Navy did during World War II to train aircraft carrier pilots was they had some small aircraft carriers in the Great Lakes. They learned how to take off and land there on the Great Lakes on these smaller carriers before they went to bigger ones. And this was a plane that crashed on takeoff. Pilot survived, but the plane went into Lake Michigan. Oops, I accidentally, where am I now? So we got it in 2006, and it took 5 years to restore. We have a total of 15 aircraft on board, and they go from World War II aircraft like this through the Cold War up to the F-14, which you guys might remember from the first Top Gun movie, and that aircraft was retired in 2006. As a member of our club, you can participate in all our club activities. We have quite a few operating days, like the Navy's birthday, the Marine Corps' birthday, the Hornets Commissioning Day, Apollo 11 and 12 Recovery Day, many more. Museum Ships Weekend is a 48-hour event where about 300 or so, 200 to 300 museum ships all get on over the weekend, and people try and work as many museum ships as they can. And we're on for Veterans Day, Memorial Day, and I'm going to start putting us on the air every 4th of July as well. So there's plenty of operating events to participate in. After you complete a small training course, we have like a little test that we give. You can have full use of the club shack. We have control operators that are there that can help you out. I'll tell you more about the equipment and how many HF stations we have in the shack and a little further along. So the picture here is one of our members, Gwen. She now lives near Sacramento, but that picture there is her operating during Veterans Day. The antennas we use are all the original ship's antennas. The ship is a National Historic Landmark, and we can't change the way the ship is configured or looks, outside or inside. So we're using original ship's antennas. A couple of them that we're using are these twin HF whips here. They're at about 125 feet. VHF and UHF, we have a little Comet dual band antenna. That's the only one that's really not original, but we painted it black and it blends in. So we use a fan dipole that pretty much goes from this lower yard arm up to this upper yard arm. And it also continues on way up here to about close to 200 feet. And we're going to try and get that going in the near future. In addition to these antennas, we have 2 verticals that are on the edge of the flight deck at about 60 feet that we're using. And that number is going to change because we're actually in the process of refurbishing ship's antennas. We're going to at least get 3 or 4 more antennas on. Our hopes are to have at least 7 antennas to choose from on the ship in the near future. We're working on it now. In fact, I'm going to be on the ship tomorrow on the flight deck stripping paint from the verticals that we've taken down. So As far as requirements to join HARC, you don't have to have previous military service. I don't have previous military service. We're probably about 50-50 or 60-40 people with military service and people without. It doesn't really make a difference to us. Everybody's welcome. And all you need is a ham license. And actually now we've created a new level of club member where you don't even have to have a ham license. You just have to be interested in amateur radio and have a desire to help preserve the ship's history by being on the air. In the past, we've given some tests, exams, amateur license exams on the ship, and I'm hoping to get at least a tech exam started maybe for March, but we've done it in the past. A little brief history of the Hornet. This is what the Hornet looked like during World War II. The ship was commissioned in 1943. It was an Essex-class aircraft carrier, commissioned in November of 1943. A total of 24 of these aircraft carriers were built during World War II. It has a displacement of 27,500 tons. It's 872 feet long, and it's 93 feet. It has a beam of 93 feet, so that's its width. Basically, they couldn't make it much wider. It had to get through the Panama Canal. There are 8 boilers powering 4 steam turbines, which provided 150,000 shaft horsepower to 4 propellers. It's roughly the same length as the Titanic. The Titanic was 883 feet, and we're 870 and some change. So a couple of things that happened to the Hornet in World War II. 4 June of 1945, it was struck by a typhoon off the coast of Japan and folded back about 30 to 40 feet of the flight deck. So if you can imagine that flight deck 60 feet above the water line, so that wave had to be at least 60 feet to bend that flight deck down. So briefly, the Hornet actually steamed backwards and launched planes off the stern until it was sent back to San Francisco for repair. The Hornet's World War II scoreboard that's hanging up in the hangar deck. Those are a lot of the things it participated in, tonnage that it sunk, planes that it shot down. I believe it has the record for most planes shot down by its air groups in World War II. After World War II, it went from a CV to a CVA, which meant an attack carrier. So it had some modifications. Basically, its flight deck was upgraded and reinforced because now jets started taking off of it. It had new catapults installed. Its armament was changed because they were now flying jets, and lots of the World War II armament couldn't track the jets, so a lot of it was removed. The island or superstructure right here was redesigned. Upgraded landing systems, things like that. And they added a hurricane bow. So when you saw that bow, that the flight deck that folded over on the bow, they actually enclosed the whole front of the ship so that if it went through a wave like that again, the flight deck wouldn't fold over onto itself. The Hornet's final iteration was as a CVS, and this is how you would see it now in Alameda at the pier. This is an anti-submarine aircraft carrier. So the last thing it did, or one of the last things it did, was hunt submarines. It had a large number of helicopters added to its air group and fixed-wing anti-submarine aircraft instead of attack aircraft. It had sonobuoys and shipper air-launched anti-submarine torpedoes, and it had some other conversions and redesigns. And one of the things they did to it here was they installed Gemini space recovery facilities. And that comes in a little handy for the Hornet's last great hurrah, which was recovering Apollo 11 and 12, Apollo 11 being the first men on the moon. But before it did that, it did 3 tours in Vietnam at Yankee and Dixie stations performing anti-submarine duties. I don't know if the North The Vietnamese had submarines in the area, but the Russians probably did. So I'm assuming that's what it was hunting. But the last thing it did in 1969 was the recovery of Apollo 11. That's Neil Armstrong and Collins and Aldrin, first men on the moon. And then Apollo 12, which was an all-Navy crew. So again, highlights. Keel was laid in 1942, and actually, if you go all the way down to the keel, it's stamped USS Kearsarge, not USS Hornet. It was originally going to be the USS Kearsarge, but the previous Hornet was recently sunk, and for morale purposes, it was renamed USS Hornet. Still says Kearsarge down on the keel if you get down there. Commissioned in 1943, it took only 13 months to build it, and she joined the fleet in the Pacific. So if you ever drive up to it and see how big it is, you're like, wow, they did that in 13 months. That's pretty incredible. 43 to 45, like I said, in World War II, it took part in 59 major battles, holds the record for most enemy aircraft destroyed in the air and on the ground. And then I showed you the typhoon damage. And before repairs were completed to that ship for the typhoon damage, the war ended and it took part in Operation Magic Carpet. So they welded a whole bunch of racks or beds onto the hangar deck, and it brought troops back from the Pacific Theater. 47, it was decommissioned and then recommissioned as an attack carrier. And I kind of already told you a lot of this stuff, but you can read through it here. And the big thing that it did at the end was Apollo 11 and 12. So almost every documentary or movie you watch on 11 or 12 Apollo, you'll see the Hornet there picking the guys up. And in 1970, right after it picked up Apollo, it was decommissioned and placed in reserve status. In 89, the Navy struck it from its records. And then in 91, we became a National Historic Landmark. In 1995, the Hornet was about to be dismantled, scrapped. And the Aircraft Carrier Hornet Foundation was formed, and they preserved her as a museum. And we opened up in 1998 as a museum. And like I said, we're presently at Pier Number 2 at the former Naval Air Station in Alameda, or Naval Base in Alameda, actually. Air Station is a little bit away from us. These are just the campaign and service medals you can look at that Hornet won through its career. So when I talk about loving history and preserving history when you're on the air, this is the kind of stuff that I talk about. Hornet did a lot of things, and it's a very historic ship, and it's fun to talk to people on the air when we're making contacts about the ship. This is one section of the ship that's on the deck that our radio room's on. It's the Combat Information Center, or the nerve center of the ship. And this was something that was restored by ship's restoration. An interesting fact here, you see all these boards up on the wall with writing on them. There are actually people behind those boards writing all that information backwards on there so they could read it from in front. So if you ever get into this room, and I have the key, I can get you in there occasionally. But one of the things I like to point out is there's people behind there that were writing backwards for all that. So I don't know if that was a skill they could use later on in life, but maybe working at a used car lot, writing the price on the inside or something. But
at one point, they could be a weatherman.
Right, exactly. So this is one of the big events we have on the ship. It's an operating event for us, and it's a huge event for the ship. Apollo 11 splashdown. This was the 50th anniversary, which was not too long ago. So you can see that's the hangar deck. You can see all the guests on there during this event. And that helicopter is painted up as the helicopter that recovered Apollo 11 and 12. Okay, so moving on to the ham stuff. We have field day, or we have until roughly COVID. We couldn't do it then. And then after that, in July, that's field day is July, yeah. The Army was renting the ship for the entire month of July for 2 years, so we couldn't be on there and set up our field day stuff. So hopefully next year. But we have about a 40-foot tower and a tribander that we put up on the flight deck. So maybe that's roughly at 100 feet above sea level. We have 2 or 3 stations we run generator power. And I like to say we have the best view in the Bay Area from our operating position. You can see San Francisco off the stern, the entire skyline, the Bay Bridge, Oakland skyline, across the bay to the peninsula here where we are, pretty much a 360-degree view. We can't see the Pompanito, no. I thought maybe it'd be fun to use some of the Aldous lamps up on the island and try and signal some of the ships, but it's kind of around the bend in San Francisco. So here's where we operate from. We're right in front of the island on the flight deck. We set up these tents and we operate field day there. We actually have a berthing area for the club. So there's a compartment that sleeps 6. So for those that want to stay overnight, if you go through new volunteer orientation, they'll issue you a badge like this one. They'll run a security check on you first, and they'll give you a badge, and that'll allow you to stay overnight. And when you come on board the ship, you just have to sign in. You don't have to tell security that you're part of the radio group. And then you don't have to go home. You can operate all you want, and there's a place to sleep 1 deck down. So it's nice and convenient. And the head or bathroom right next to our berthing area now has hot water. So no more cold showers, which is awesome. And there's the inside of the tent. I think we had an FT8 station and 2 HF stations this year, the year that this photo was taken. So that's inside the tent, operating field day. And we've been using the call sign November 6 Hotel N6 Hornet for field day. And there's the sunset from the flight deck. You can see our tribander right up here, and there's the San Francisco skyline in the background. And that's sunset during field day. This is our radio room. Like I said, we're using these RF350s right now. We have 4 HF operating positions plus a HF FT8 operating position. So I guess you could say 5, but that's going to increase by 1 soon. And the reason why, this is just another shot of the radio room. So you can see there's operating positions against both bulkheads. In the back here, we've got a kitchen with a microwave coffee maker. And if you don't want to put stuff in the microwave, Domino's delivers to the Hornet. So we can get pizza. That's what the typical operating position has looked like for at least the last 10 years I've been there. The radios are all remotely controlled. So everything on the front panel of that radio is right here on this screen. A club member had designed this software. Then our logging program, Keyer, and this is a little audio box to plug in headphones and paddles and computer to run it. And that's the way it has been for as long as I've been on the ship. But in January, we just received a $90,000 grant from ARDC to upgrade our shack and antennas. So that's why we're working on the antennas. That's why we're adding another HF operating position, and they're all going to be Flex 6400s. We have the radios already. We're in the process of installing them, and we're in the process of refurbishing the antennas. And a bunch of other stuff like a Geochron and all new seating inside our radio room and stuff like that. But the radios are the main thing. And although I like using the Harris radios, because that's kind of my vintage when I became a ham, these Flex radios are really nice. Big improvement. So I'm really looking forward to getting all 5 of them set up in there and running and get them in the rack. No. Nope. And speaking of special events, these are some of our special event QSL cards that we offer. You can see upper left, Doolittle Raid Day in April. And then upper center, we have our splashdown for Apollo 11 and 12. The ship's original call in the upper right when we use that call sign. And coming up right before Pacificon, if you guys want to visit, any of you, 13 October, Sunday, next Sunday, we'll be celebrating the birthday of the United States Navy. And we have that special QSL card. And then November 10, Birth Corps, because we have a couple of members that are Marines that felt left out, we started celebrating the birthday of the United States Marine Corps. and commissioning day, 29 October. So we have at least 3 special operating days coming up in the next couple of months. And that's all I have for you guys. And thanks for your patience, I guess I would say. And thanks for listening. And if you have any questions, I can answer a few of them if you want right now. I guess over there, I guess, or I don't know anybody's name, so I'm sorry.
We got to get a mic to her. Hang on, as soon as Rob can figure the magic out.
Oh, and if you do operate from the ship, I forgot to mention, when you make your first contact from the ship, we have a certificate that we mail out to you saying that you've made a contact from the USS Hornet. So sure. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. The day you can always count on without asking anybody is the first Saturday of the month. So like tomorrow, because that's when we have our monthly meeting. And I run it from the radio room on the ship, and I have the radio room open all day. Now, on our website, which is nb6gc.org, there's a plan a visit link you can click, and that links you to my email. You can always email me and say, I'm thinking of going up. What day can you meet me up there? Or there's also a little thing that runs across the screen that tells you what operating events are coming up. What was that? Oh, the question was, when can you come up to the ship and operate, or what are good times to come up to see the radio room and operate? The best day is the first Saturday of every month, but you can go to our website and contact me, and I'll try and accommodate you if I can. I work from home, and I don't work often from home, so I can usually make time to come up to the ship. I work in the ham radio industry, so I try not to work that hard. Mm-hmm. The question was some steel cables that go between the bow up to the island and then down to the stern, right? Those are still there. Basically, that's not an antenna. That's to run we run the flags up that. But there was a guy that contacted me about a month ago that asked me if we wanted to play around on, I think there's a band around below the broadcast band that hams can use. What is it, 400 megahertz? Something like that. But anyways, I had to apply to the FCC, and if I didn't hear back from them in a month, it means we could participate. I haven't heard back from the FCC, so I think I'm clear to go. And since this event is on a Sunday night when the museum's closed, I think we might be able to try and load that up to use it on that frequency, because it's the longest wire we have on the ship. The reason why we don't use it as an antenna all the time is it's too easy for a guest to grab it when he's on the flight deck near the antenna, and then he'd end up getting an RF burn, and we'd get in a lot of trouble. So that's why we're not using that wire. No, it's there. See, that's why we don't use it as an antenna, because people grab them. Yeah, well, it's not being used for any RF. So, but Sunday night when the museum's closed, when that guy has his little event, I think we might try. So, anyone else?
Test. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
It was a fantastic tour. We had probably 50 people that were split up into 2 groups and toured all over. It was just amazing. Some of us even got to go up into the top of what do you call it?
The island.
The island, yeah. And then we had a nice lunch afterwards down in the mess. So it was good. If somebody was interested in organizing a trip like that again, that would be great. That would be fun.
Yeah, I can help get that done. With that many people, I have to talk to other people on the ship to get it all done.
Right, yeah.
You know,
yeah,
a small
exactly.
group, I can take them on board. I can show you Radio Central and a couple other places on the deck that we're on. But if it's that big a group, we'll have to get some other people in.
I just wanted to throw the plug in because it was. a
Yeah, great.
tour.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time and I hope you come back.
Okay, we got another person over here.
Yes, I'd like to endorse the possibility of another para trip to the Hornet. We've been up there at least twice that I know of. And my daughter set up a surprise birthday party for me on I think it's called the Fantail,
Mhm.
about 10 years ago, 75th birthday. So there's lots of ways to enjoy the Hornet. And it's an amazing piece of equipment, and it's stunning that they can make a museum out of a gadget that's so big. But really, I can really endorse the effort up there.
Oh, here we go. How'd you figure out that Domino's would deliver to your ship?
How did I figure out what?
That Domino's would deliver?
We phoned them up and said, here's where we're at. Can you bring it to us? And they said, yeah. And then we tracked it on our phone. When he got to the pier, we went down there and met him. So it works out great.
If there's anybody on Zoom that has a question, just please put it in the chat and we'll get you. I did have a question on where the Hornet is now. Has that been its original spot ever since it's been a museum? And how does
Ever
that-
since it's been a museum, it's always been there.
and how did they pick Alameda for that?
It had been birthed there before. The naval base was being closed, so there was room.
Oh, we've got a comment here.
I can answer that question. There is actually a rather famous picture of the Hornet when it was tied up to Pier 3 down there. And you can see 4 aircraft carriers in a row that were tied up to that base. So basically when the old Hornet was sunk and the new one was put in there, when they brought it to the West Coast, they moved it to Pier 3. And I've got it somewhere in my files, where it is, where you can see that. tied
Yeah,
up.
the Hornet was stationed in Alameda quite a bit.
Yeah.
So they just brought it back there.
As the war moved on to the Pacific, as the war moved on further, went further and further with northern latitudes up to the Aleutians and places like that. So they tended to not base it in San Diego. They tended to base it either in Pearl Harbor or in Washington. We have a transmitter from that period, actually in that room you saw from World War II. And the guy said, "Do you think this was original to the ship?" And I reached in there with a pair of tongs, and pulled out this calibration card from the people that last calibrated it, and it was from Naval Base in Washington. So.
Thank you. I've got another question back here.
Yes, thank you. In the old days, you come aboard the Hornet to visit the communications area, to the club, and there was a wavering of the costs for access to the ship. Is that still true today, or
What
or
was
did
it?
they-
There was a what now?
I don't know if did they. It used to be you have to pay to get aboard the ship,
Right.
and when you're coming aboard the ship to work in the communications aboard as a ham radio operator, they wavered that.
They're
cost.
they're not no longer doing that.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering.
Admission to the ship for adults is $20, I think, for veterans, 15. And membership to our club is $20 a year. And I'll leave some membership forms up here if any of you are interested. But I think for being able to, and once you pay to be a club member, you can come on board anytime you want, as long as the Radio Shack's open. There's
So
no charge.
that precludes the cost of payment each day, each time for
If you're a club member, yes.
$20? Well, it's quite a deal then, isn't it? Gee, join up.
And I try and have the radio room open 3 to 4 times a month, so it'll more than pay for itself in 1 month if you start showing up all the time.
I'm going to read Daryl's comment. and list out a couple of questions from the Zoom. So Daryl's comment is, my dad was aboard the Hornet when Apollo 11 was recovered. I've got the photos of it somewhere. Must have been exciting. And he also has a question. Do they still run the older radios for HF? If so, do they have the old high voltage generator to run high power transmitters?
No, we don't run any of the older radios. One thing that happened when the ship was decommissioned is a lot of the equipment that was on board the ship was what they call demilled. And they actually just reached in there and tore things out of the radios so that they wouldn't work. So although we have a lot of like Collins R390s and things like that, transmitters and such on the ship, none of that stuff is operable. I just know of one of the R1051s working in Radio Central, which is right across from our compartment. And there's a Collins R390 working in the aerological office up in the island, but the museum actually had to go out and buy one to get a working one. And we probably have, at least that I know of, 10 to 15 of them that I can walk to in less than 5 minutes, but none of them are working because they demilled them all. They broke them all, and they broke them in such a way that it's going to be quite hard to repair them. So unfortunately, no.
And Walt asks, how many ghosts inhabit the ship?
Okay, well, I have been overnight on that ship a lot. Sometimes I've been the only one on that ship overnight. I have not seen a ghost. Now, I'm not saying they don't exist. I've just never seen one. People say, oh, I felt a breeze on my back. Well, my explanation is that a lot of the hatches are open, and if there's any wind, there's breezes in the ship. And when they hear things, that's a steel ship. It expands and contracts, especially on days like we've been having. When it cools off at night, it'll creak a little bit. But I'm not saying they don't exist. I've just never in my time on the ship and all the nights I've spent there, I've never seen a ghost. Supposedly they're there. And some of the crew members, I've had some pretty heated arguments with them, and they're insisting that they exist, but they don't like me. I don't know. Ghostbusters.
Well, it's a pretty large playground to get lost in.
Yeah, I think they know I'm up there and they just go to other decks. Yeah, and I sometimes stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning if I know I'm going to do an overnight, just to get on the air and work late into the night. So.
All right. Oh, one more question here from Gary. Oh, of course it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a sister ship. Mm-hmm. 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 We're using our own tuners on the ones that we use. So there's 2 of them right now that have tuners. And we have like 7 more tuners in boxes at my house that we're going to use on the new ones that we refurbish.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was always impressed by the tuners because I don't know if you've ever taken them apart, but there's a big coil in there made of copper wire, which is silver plated, and a vacuum capacitor, making an L network, and they can switch it from one L to the other well, depending on whether the frequency is lower or higher.
Yeah, none of the tuners are there. I'm thinking that when the ship was decommissioned and they took off what they wanted to reuse, they probably took those tuners, because those whips are still in pretty much the same. And I was talking to a guy who was on Coral Sea in the 70s, and he said the antennas are exactly like the ones we have on the Hornet.
Yeah, that's what we had when I was on the ship. They were about 37 feet tall.
We have some that are a little shorter, some that are 28, but
But
some that are longer.
but they're aluminum pipe.
Yep, that's what we've taken down, and that's what I'm stripping the paint off, and more than likely we'll be on the flight deck tomorrow stripping the paint off some of those
Right.
so we could repaint them.
Anyway, one of the things I used to work on was the R390s. The other thing was the VHF transmitter receivers, the TED Reds,
Might have one on board. I'm not sure.
and the 200 to 400 megahertz with
Yeah,
a
there's
100-watt amplifier.
there's still a lot of stuff in Radio Central, and I take people in there, but I don't know what every single thing.
I know what a
Come
lot of the
on,
old radio
You come
equipment.
on board and I can bring you into Radio Central and you can educate me so I can give a better tour.
Yeah.
So I'll
By
be
the-
there tomorrow.
But by the way, there's one other thing. I was on the tour one time, and just for the heck of it, there was a guy who was talking about the 5-inch 38 cannons. And I asked him if it had any recoil to it, because I knew the answer. And he said, no, this has no recoil. Well, one day they were firing those things on the ship I was on. I was sitting on the flight deck. The guns are below the flight deck. And I was going to take a picture of it firing one of these things that they're firing in one day. And I set my camera up so I could take a picture of it. And I was sitting with my legs over the edge of the flight deck. And they fired the cannon. And the next thing I knew, I was laying on my back looking straight up at the sky with the camera in my hand. I had taken a picture, but I had no idea what it was until I got it. When I got it, you can see the projectile at the end of the barrel coming out with an orange flame front. Rather interesting for something that wasn't planned. And by the way, the 5-inch 38s have recoil.
Any additional questions, Zoomer in here? Okay. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for tonight and hooking us up. And I think so far, sounds like we may have a tour coming up to the Hornet. So we'll be planning something like that in the future.
All right.
All
thank you
right.
Very much. All right. Up the good work. Up there goes one membership application.
Find by going to our NB6.org.
Say that one more time.
nb6gc.org. There's a tab that says plan a visit. Click on that. My name will pop up and click on that link and it'll take you to my email. So if you want to try and plan a visit sometime and we're not usually open, email me and I'll try and do what I can to get you on board and let you play with the radios. So.
There we go.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, let's give him another hand.